You are 20, laid off on a Friday from a 19-day job. The job paid $22.40 an hour. 9 years later, the same work pays $130,000 a year. 4 layoffs that year. You were not failing. There are no permanent jobs in this trade, and there were never meant to be. A boiler is shut down, opened, repaired at speed by a crowd of travelers, and closed again, and the crowd goes home. This is every level of a Boilermaker's career, and what it costs to climb. If you want to see how these trades really pay, subscribe so you do not miss the next one. We start at level 1, the pre-apprentice helper. The pre-apprentice helper earns $22.40 an hour, roughly $46,600 a year. Most of them are 18 to 23. You carry things: leads, hoses, rod ovens, scaffold planks, blankets. You sit at the manhole of a boiler drum as a hole watch for 10 hours while somebody else welds inside, and your entire job is to keep looking at a man who is not talking to you and to know how to get him out. Your hands are black by the first break. Everything you touch is either sharp, hot, or heavy, and often 2 of those. Getting in requires a driver's license, a clean drug screen, and a phone that you answer at 5 in the morning. A steady stream of them are gone before the first outage ends, and the reason is almost never the work itself. It is the phone call telling them the job is over on Friday. Here is what nobody tells you. The men around you are not judging your muscle. They are watching whether you are still standing at that manhole in hour 9, awake, when nobody has walked past you since lunch. The ones who pass that test get told when the next class opens. Here is the mechanism, and it explains everything strange about the money in this trade. Boilers, pressure vessels, and the tube walls inside them are repaired during an outage, which is a planned shutdown of a power station, refinery, paper mill, or chemical plant. The unit is taken offline, the work is done around the clock by a crew that did not exist a week earlier, and the unit comes back on. Spring and fall are heavy because demand for power dips between the heating and cooling seasons. Summer and deep winter are thin. That is why nobody has a permanent job. The contractor does not need 400 Boilermakers in July and cannot find 400 in April, so the trade solved it a century ago by making the workforce travel. Your union hall keeps a list. You sign it, you wait, and when a call comes in from a hall 6 states away, you take it, or you do not. Which means the men who earn the most are not the best welders. They are the men who will drive 11 hours on a Sunday for a job that ends in 3 weeks, and who have already signed the next list before that job ends. The apprentice earns $27.90 an hour, roughly $58,000 a year. Most of them are 19 to 27. You are indentured for roughly 4 years, working the whole time and going to related training on your own weekends. Rigging, layout, burning, fitting, and welding in every position, including flat on your back with molten metal falling toward your collar. You learn to read a drawing that a fitter drew badly. You learn that the tape measure lives in your pocket and the 50-pound grinder lives in your hands. Getting in requires a completed application to a local lodge, an aptitude test, and an interview with the Joint Apprenticeship Committee. A large share of apprentices do not finish the program, and the reason they give is the travel, and specifically, what the travel does to a household with small children in it. Here is what nobody tells you. The apprenticeship is not a school with a job attached. It is a 4-year audition in front of the exact men who will decide, later, whether your name goes on a phone call. Because in this trade, the phone call is the entire economy. The Journeyman Boilermaker earns $36.70 an hour, roughly $76,300 a year. Most of them are 23 to 45. You are now a hand, and a hand is expected to be dropped into a plant he has never seen, handed a print, and be productive before lunch. You work inside the vessel. The space is dark and lined with tube. The air is moved by a fan somebody hung in the manhole, and you spend the shift bent at an angle a body was not designed to hold. You will burn out a set of coveralls. You will meet a man on Tuesday, work beside him for 19 days, and never see him again in your life. Getting here requires a completed apprenticeship, a valid respirator fit test, and the willingness to leave on a Sunday. A good many of them settle into local work at this stage and quietly stop traveling, and their income flattens for the next 30 years while their skill does not. Here is what nobody tells you. The base rate at this level is close to what a competent local tradesman makes anywhere. Everything above it in this video is bought with a truck and a motel key. There is one qualification that changes the phone call from an offer into a request. The certified tube welder earns $20 an hour, roughly $91,900 a year. Most of them are 28 to 50. You weld pressure tube. Small diameter, thick wall, often overhead, often with a mirror because you cannot see the back of the joint, in a boiler where the tubes sit close enough together that your hood touches the one behind you. Every weld you make is X-rayed. Your name is on it. The test to hold the qualification is retaken on a schedule, and failing it on a Monday morning means you drive home on Monday afternoon. Getting here requires a procedure qualification test, a certification held under a recognized code, and a steady hand at an angle you cannot practice at home. Only a small share of journeymen carry a full set of pressure qualifications, and a fair number of those who test for it fail on the first attempt. Here is what nobody tells you. Some high-pressure alloys can crack days after the weld is finished if the preheat or the cooling was wrong. The film taken at the joint that afternoon is clean. By the time the crack opens, the crew has moved 4 states away, and the only record of who ran that bead is your stencil. That is the weight the next rung is actually paid for. There is one more piece of arithmetic, and it decides the size of the check more than the rate does. An outage is a race against a clock the plant owner is paying for by the hour of lost production, which means the schedule is not 8 hours. It is 12-hour shifts, 6 or 7 days a week, for the length of the job, with everything past 40 hours paid at a premium and often a second premium on the 7th day. Add subsistence, which is a daily allowance paid to a traveling hand for being away from home, on top of the wage. The result is that the hourly rate on the agreement and the number on the check can be very different animals, and a man working a heavy spring in a foreign hall can out-earn a man on the same rate who slept in his own bed all year. The trade is not paying you more for being better. It is paying you more for being available, and availability is a decision you make about your life, not a skill you acquire. The foreman earns $51.60 an hour, roughly $107,300 a year. Most of them are 35 to 55. This figure sits at the top edge of what the Federal Wage Survey records for this trade, and it gets there through the foreman rate stacked on outage overtime, rather than through any different hourly agreement. You run a crew of 10 to 20 inside a unit that is dark, crowded, and behind schedule. You are the man who decides who goes in the tight spot and who does not, and you are the man who tells the general foreman that the joint will not be done tonight. Getting here requires years of travel behind you, a reputation that arrives before you do, and the ability to argue with a superintendent without making it personal. A number of good hands turn this seat down flat, because the raise is modest, and the first thing you lose is the right to put your hood down and disappear into the work. Here is what nobody tells you. A foreman is not paid to know welding. He is paid to be the person who says the words that stop $400,000 of production out loud, with his own name attached. There is a reason that job description is written that way, and it was written in Connecticut. On the 7th of February, 2010, at the Kleen energy plant in Middletown, Connecticut, a crew was cleaning debris out of new fuel piping. The method used was a gas blow. Natural gas at roughly 650 pounds per square inch was forced through the pipe and vented into an open construction site with dozens of workers on it. The gas found an ignition source. 6 workers were killed and dozens more were injured, and the blast was felt for miles. The Chemical Safety Board investigated and issued 18 recommendations. Connecticut banned the use of flammable gas for pipe cleaning at power plants, and the national fire codes were amended. The men on that site were not reckless. They were following a practice that was normal in the industry that morning and unthinkable the next. The superintendent earns $62.90 an hour, roughly $130,800 a year. Most of them are 40 to 60. This number sits above the top of the federal wage survey for the trade, and it should, because the role is salaried management for a contractor rather than tools in hand. You bid the job, you staff it, you answer for the schedule, and you are the one calling halls to find 60 hands in 9 days. You are also the man who signs the layoff list on Friday, having been on that list yourself. Getting here requires a long field record, a contractor willing to carry you between jobs, and a tolerance for being the person everybody blames. Hardly any hands take this road, and a good many who do describe the change as trading a trade for a telephone. Here is what nobody tells you. The superintendent is salaried, which sounds like the prize, and salaried means the overtime that built the money in this trade stops applying to him, which is how the man below him ends up with the bigger year. The exit here is not upward, it is sideways, and it is arithmetic. A journeyman with pressure qualifications, who chases both outage seasons, spring and fall, and takes the heavy shutdowns wherever they land, works long stretches of premium hours, with subsistence running underneath them, and he does that in the 2 windows when the demand is highest and the halls are empty. That man does not have a career ladder. He has a calendar, and the calendar pays better than the ladder does. And that is the answer from the opening. The men who get rich here are not the best hands. They are the ones who stopped hearing the Friday layoff as a failure and started reading it as the signal to make the next call. Helper, $22.40 an hour, sitting at a manhole for 10 hours watching a man who never speaks. Apprentice, $27.90, 4 years of weekends. Journeyman, $36.70, bent at an angle inside a dark vessel. Certified tube welder, $44.20, a stencil on a joint that might crack next week. Foreman, $51.60, saying the sentence that stops the job. Superintendent, $62.90, signing the list he used to be on. Every other trade sells you the idea of steady work. This one tells you the truth on the first Friday and pays the men who believe it. Next, every level of an Alaska crab fisherman,